In August 1935, from Oxford, Erwin Schrödinger wrote a letter to Albert Einstein. He described a thought experiment he had invented to show how absurd quantum mechanics had become. A cat, a sealed box, a radioactive atom that might or might not decay. If the atom decays, a mechanism kills the cat. If it does not, the cat lives. Quantum mechanics, he argued, would require the cat to be simultaneously alive and dead until someone opened the box. He called this quite ridiculous. Einstein agreed. Neither expected the experiment to survive them. 90 years later, it has not been resolved. It has gotten stranger. In this video, we are counting down 9 real, documented, unresolved problems that Schrödinger's cat created for modern physics. Not philosophy, not metaphor. Real experiments, real prizes, real disagreements between physicists who have spent careers on this. We will end at number 1 with a question that no laboratory anywhere in the world has yet closed. Stay with me. Number 9. The thought experiment designed to destroy quantum mechanics. By 1935, quantum theory was producing predictions of extraordinary accuracy, but it contained a problem. At the quantum scale, particles did not have definite properties until they were measured. An electron passing through a double slit did not go left or right. It went through both simultaneously. Its state was described by a wave function, a mathematical object encoding all possible outcomes at once. Schrödinger found this philosophically intolerable. His cat scenario, published in November 1935 in the German journal Naturwissenschaften, was a reductio ad absurdum aimed at the dominant Copenhagen interpretation, which instructed physicists not to ask what happens before measurement. Schrödinger scaled the indeterminacy up to the macroscopic world deliberately to expose what he saw as an incompleteness in the theory. The cat was not a puzzle he wanted solved. It was a weapon, he fired it. The weapon was captured, turned around, and it has been pointed at every attempted solution ever since. Number 8. The measurement problem. If quantum superposition collapses when something is observed, then what qualifies as an observation? A human eye, a photon detector, a molecule bouncing off another molecule in the air. This is not a semantic question. It has direct experimental consequences. In 1932, John von Neumann showed mathematically that there is no principled place in quantum mechanics to draw the line between quantum system and classical observer, what physicists call the Heisenberg cut. Everything, including the measuring device, obeys quantum mechanics. But then who collapses the wave function? The most rigorous analysis produces an infinite regress. The detector is in superposition. The scientist reading the detector is in superposition. The room is in superposition. At some point, something collapses. Physics cannot identify what. Number 7. Quantum decoherence. The best answer physics currently has and why it is not complete. In 1970, the German physicist Heinz Dieter, working at the University of Heidelberg, published a paper in Foundations of Physics titled On the Interpretation of Measurement in Quantum Theory. His proposal: superposition does not collapse mysteriously, it leaks. When a quantum system interacts with its environment, entanglement spreads to billions of surrounding particles. The original quantum information disperses so completely that it becomes undetectable. Zay's idea, later formalized by Weizsäcker, became known as decoherence. It is real. It is mathematically rigorous. It has been experimentally confirmed. The problem is that decoherence does not make the other branches of the wave function disappear. It makes them invisible to us. In a strict mathematical reading, they still exist. Decoherence explains why we do not see superpositions. It does not explain why we see one outcome rather than another. The cat problem is not solved. It is displaced. Number 6. Wigner's friend. In 1961, physicist Eugene Wigner moved Schrödinger's problem from an animal to a colleague. Wigner imagined a friend sealed inside a laboratory performing a quantum measurement. From inside, the friend observes a definite result. From outside, Wigner, unable to access the laboratory, must describe the entire system, including his friend, as being in quantum superposition. Two observers, two different descriptions of reality, both mathematically valid. Wigner used this to argue that consciousness must play a special role in wave function collapse. Most physicists today reject the consciousness interpretation. But the scenario was sharpened in 2018 when Czesław Bruckner of the University of Vienna published a no-go theorem for observer-independent facts in the journal Entropy, formalizing it into an experimentally testable framework. A 6-photon experiment by Prietti and colleagues followed in 2019. The results did not resolve Wigner's dilemma. They made it experimentally concrete. Number 5. The many worlds interpretation and why more physicists accept it than will publicly admit. In 1957, Hugh Everett III completed his doctoral thesis at Princeton under John Wheeler. His proposal, the wave function never collapses. Every time a quantum measurement occurs, the universe branches. In one branch, the cat is alive. In another, it is dead. Both branches are equally real. There is no collapse because there is nothing to collapse into. All outcomes simply occur in different branches of a universal wave function. Everett's thesis was met with scorn from Niels Bohr. He left academic physics. He died in 1982 without seeing his interpretation vindicated. Since then, it has accumulated support. A 2013 survey of Quantum Foundation's researchers, published in Studies in History and Philosophy of Modern Physics by Schlosser, Koffler, and Zeilinger, found Copenhagen still leading at around 42%, but many worlds in second place at 18%, ahead of every other interpretation. The appeal is mathematical cleanliness. The cost is ontological. You must accept that every quantum event splits reality. A growing number of physicists are paying that price. Number 4. In May 1996, a team led by Christopher Monroe and David Wineland at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Boulder, Colorado, did something that should not have been possible. They created what physicists formally call a Schrödinger cat state, a single beryllium-9 ion placed in a superposition of two spatially separated quantum states simultaneously. The ion was, in a precise technical sense, in two places at once. Monroe, Meekhoff, King, and Wineland published the result in the journal Science. The work was not metaphorical. It was a direct laboratory instantiation of the conceptual problem Schrödinger had raised 60 years earlier, at the scale of a single atom. Wineland received the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2012, shared with Serge Haroch, for, in the Nobel Committee's wording, groundbreaking experimental methods that enable measuring and manipulation of individual quantum systems. The 1996 cat state experiment was central to that body of work. The significance is this: cat states are real physical phenomena, and the question sharpened. If a single ion can be in superposition, where exactly does the quantum world end? Number 3. Vienna, 1999. A team led by Marcus Arndt and Anton Zeilinger at the University of Vienna fired molecules of Buckminster fullerene C60, a carbon sphere of 60 atoms, through a diffraction grating. The molecules produced an interference pattern. An interference pattern requires the object to pass through both slits simultaneously. A molecule containing 60 carbon atoms was in quantum superposition. The experiment was published in Nature in October 1999, with Arndt as first author and Zeilinger as senior author. These are not particles. These are objects large enough to have a defined geometry, a shape, a structure. They were in two places at once. The question Schrödinger asked about a cat applies, with full mathematical force, to objects far larger than physicists in 1935 imagined possible. Number 2. The boundary that keeps moving. Each decade, the Vienna group has asked the same question: how large can an object be and still show quantum behavior? In 2019, Yakov Fain and colleagues in Marcus Arndt's laboratory, working with chemists at the University of Basel, demonstrated interference with molecules called functionalized oligotetrophenylporphyrins, masses beyond 25,000 atomic mass units, containing up to 2,000 atoms. The result was published in Nature Physics. These molecules have defined shapes. They have masses measurable on a sensitive balance. They entered superposition. Each experiment narrows the search for the decoherence boundary, the scale at which collapse models predict quantum mechanics should transition to classical physics. And each time a new record is set, the boundary is not found. It moves. Physicists once expected that somewhere quantum weirdness would stop. Instead, the experiments keep climbing. The largest objects ever placed in superposition are many orders of magnitude larger than theorists in Schrödinger's time thought possible. The cat is not a metaphor. It is a destination the experiments are approaching. Number 1. The unresolved question. 90 years after Schrödinger wrote his letter, no interpretation of quantum mechanics has been experimentally confirmed over its rivals. Copenhagen, many worlds, pilot wave, relational quantum mechanics, cubism, each is mathematically consistent with all known data. Each makes identical predictions for every experiment that has been run. Physics has no empirical method to choose between them. This is not a crisis. The technology built on quantum mechanics works with extraordinary precision. MRI machines, semiconductors, lasers, atomic clocks, all of it functions perfectly while the foundational question remains open. But the question is not academic. If the wave function is real and all branches exist, then personal identity across branches becomes incoherent. If collapse is real, we do not know what causes it or when or at what scale. If decoherence is the answer, we must accept that alternatives continue to exist in a form we cannot access. The cat in the box is not a riddle from a 1935 letter that physics forgot to close. It is the edge of what the most successful scientific theory in human history can currently tell us about reality. We built the box. We cannot agree on whether to open it. Schrödinger built his thought experiment as a trap. He wanted physicists to admit that quantum mechanics, taken seriously, produced nonsense. Instead, they took the nonsense seriously. They put ions in superposition and then molecules and kept scaling upward. The trap became a program. And after 90 years, the answer is this: we do not know. We do not know whether the wave function is a real physical object or a calculation tool. We do not know what collapses it, or whether it collapses at all. We do not know where the quantum world ends and the classical world begins, because every experiment that tries to locate that boundary fails to find it. What we know is that the theory works, the technology operates, and somewhere between a beryllium ion in Boulder and a cat in a sealed box, something happens that physics has not yet learned to name. If this is the kind of question that keeps you awake, subscribe. There is more at the edge.